Welcome, everyone. This is Brother Doug with the Awakened by Yahuwah Assembly. We are with our brother D-Rail as our special guest today, and I got my sister Shoshana, brother Bobby, sister Kristen, our sister Sally, our brother Dennis, and this is going to be part 3 of the Jeremiah study, and we are starting chapter 11. If you haven't seen the earlier chapters, check out part 1 and part 2, just for the context of what we're going to be reading about. So I'm going to let my sister Kristen lead us in this study.
Okay, I'm reading from the scriptures 2009. YaramYahu 11 verse 1. The word that came to YaramYahu from Yahuwah saying, hear the words of this covenant and speak to the men of Yehuda and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. And you shall say to them, thus said Yahuwah, Elohim of Yasharal, cursed is the man who does not obey the words of this covenant, which I commanded your fathers in the day when I brought them out of the land of Mitzrayim, from the iron furnace, saying, obey my voice, and you shall do according to all that I command you, and you shall be my people, and I be your Elohim, in order to establish the oath which I have sworn to your fathers, to give them a land flowing with milk and honey, as it is this day. And I answered and said, Amen, Yahuwah. And Yahuwah said to me, proclaim all these words in the cities of Yehuda and in the streets of Jerusalem, saying, hear the words of this covenant and do them. For I earnestly warned your fathers in the day that I brought them up out of the land of Mitzrayim until this day, rising early and warning, saying, obey my voice. But they did not obey or incline their ear, but everyone walked in the stubbornness of his evil heart. So I brought on them all the words of this covenant, which I commanded them to do, and they did not do. And Yahuwah said to me, there is a conspiracy among the men of Yehuda and among the inhabitants of Jerusalem. They have turned back to the crookednesses of their forefathers, who refused to hear my words, and they have gone after other mighty ones to serve them. The house of Yasharal and the house of Yehuda have broken my covenant I made with their fathers. Therefore, thus said Yahuwah, see, I am bringing evil on them, which they are unable to escape. Then they shall cry out to me, but I shall not listen to them. And the cities of Yehuda and the inhabitants of Jerusalem shall go and cry out to the mighty ones to whom they burn incense, but they shall bring no deliverance to them at all in the time of their evil. For your mighty ones have become as many as your cities, O Yehuda, and you have set up as many slaughter places to shame as there are streets in Jerusalem, slaughter places to burn incense to Baal. Verse 14. And you do not pray for this people, or lift up a cry or prayer for them, for I do not hear them in the time that they cry out to me because of their evil. Why should my beloved be in my house? She has done wickedness with many. And does the set-apart flesh remove evil from you? Then you rejoice. Yahuwah has named you, green olive tree, beautiful, of goodly fruit. With the noise of a great sound, he has set it on fire, and its branches shall be broken. And Yahuwah of hosts, who planted you, has spoken evil against you, for the evil of the house of Yasharal and the house of Yehuda, which they have done against themselves to provoke me, by burning incense to Baal. And Yahuwah made it known to me, and I know it. Then you showed me their deeds. But I was like a gentle lamb brought to the slaughter, and I did not know that they had plotted against me, saying, let us destroy the tree with its fruit, and let us cut him off from the land of the living, and let his name be remembered no more. But, O Yahuwah of hosts, who judges righteously, who tries kidneys and heart, let me see your vengeance upon them, for unto you I have revealed my cause. Therefore, thus said Yahuwah concerning the men of Anathoth, who were seeking your life, saying, do not prophesy in the name of Yahuwah, lest you die by your hand. Therefore, thus said Yahuwah of hosts, see, I am punishing them. The young men shall die by the sword. Their sons and their daughters shall die by scarcity of food, and there shall be no remnant of them. For I bring evil on the men of Anathoth, the year of their punishment.
Oh man, I love verse 18. Really piqued my interest.
They replaced his name.
19.
Yeah, may his name be forgotten.
Their
Doesn't that sound
deeds
like-
are replacing his name.
I really want to address this because the name Yeshua has became so popular now in the Hebrew roots. I really want to address this. Yeshu is actually an acronym.
Bless you.
In the Babylonian Talmud, that means may his name be blotted. May his name be forgotten. So if we apply that to what...
It sounds like a sneeze, too.
Yeah. Yeshu. Yeah. Yeah, but in all seriousness, that acronym is basically describing verse 18, what we just read. And actually, in the NLT, in my version, it says, so his name will be forgotten forever. So they were already playing this back then. They were already playing it. The people of YaramYahu's time, this is right before the Babylonian captivity. Even right before it. So you had people changing the scriptures before the 70 years of Daniel. And I was mentioning to Brother Derail, the other verse in Jeremiah that talks about this along with this is Jeremiah 8:8, that says that they say they're wise and the law of Yahuwah is with them, but the false pen of the scribes has worked falsehood. So you have this problem where they're actually purposely trying to make his name not be remembered forever. And that's why in our scriptures you see L-O-R-D and G-O-D everywhere. That's why you don't see thus says Yahuwah, you see thus says the L-O-R-D, because they wanted to make his name not be remembered forever. And so and if you look at the context of this verse, this is talking about the Father, but in the New Testament, the Son fulfills this. He's the Lamb. He's the one that was slaughtered. Even though it says here that it's Yahuwah speaking through YaramYahu, referring to himself that he's a lamb led to the slaughter, Yahusha, his son, is the one that fulfills it. He's the one that actually gets killed like a lamb.
Jeremiah 23:27.
Yeah, and another one I brought up to Brother Derail earlier that he just brought up to me, to my remembrance, is Jeremiah 23:27. And Jeremiah 23:27 is especially important when you really get the problem of forgetting Yahuwah's name for Baal. Let's see here. It says, Jeremiah 23:27 in the Septuagint, it actually says, who devised that men may forget my law by their dreams, which they have told everyone to his neighbor, as their fathers forgot my name in the worship of Baal. So basically it's saying that these false prophets, these dreamer of dreams, kind of like how Martin Luther King always used to say, I have a dream, I have a dream. And they're saying that in that chapter, that those words are actually in that chapter. I have a dream, I have a dream. And they're making Yahuwah's people forget his law, making them not keep his law, and making them forget his name in the worship of Nimrod, Baal. So basically back then they were literally worshiping Nimrod and Semiramis. They were literally worshiping
Genesis 11.
Yeah, Genesis 11.
They had all one language, but they were.
Yeah.
Yahuwah changed it. He said, come, let us go there and confuse their language so they do not understand one another's speech.
Yeah.
I like how he's talking to Yahusha too. Come, let us go.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a conversation between Yahuwah and Yahusha.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to point something else out just tonight, actually a different topic that I got in, if I could, that I got in, what's my place? We read chapter 11, right? Yeah. The whole, how angry Yahuwah is. That he says, do not pray for these people or lift up a cry or a prayer for them, for I do not hear them in the time that they cry out to me because of their evil, because their disobedience pretty much, He's bringing evil upon them. He's really angry. And I just want to point that out, that keep on doing what you're doing and you'll see that he won't hear your cries. He won't hear your prayers. I know there's other verses that say, I can't remember what works, but where he says that he will not hear your prayers.
Yeah, well, in the book of Jeremiah, it's stated a lot. Like the first chapter of Jeremiah, he says, don't intercess for them. Don't be an intercessor for them because I will not hear their prayers. Like that's the first chapter in the book of Jeremiah. So the whole narrative of this book we're reading right now, at that point in time, they're going to Babylon almost at this point. So this is like the captivity time period. So Yahuwah's like, I'm through with them. I'm through with them. Don't be their intercessor like Masha was an intercessor.
Like Yahusha is now.
Yeah, so basically you can compare that to now where people say, oh, well, he hears my prayers. I don't have to keep the Torah, but he hears my prayers. Well, not according to King Solomon.
Right.
If you go to the book of Proverbs, it says that your prayer's an abomination to him if you don't even want to listen to the Torah. Just listen. He's not even talking about actually keeping it yet. He's saying if you don't even want to listen to someone telling you need to keep the law, yeah, I'm not going to hear your prayer. That's basically paraphrasing. That's Proverbs 28, verse 9, for anyone that's interested in looking that up. And that's King Solomon saying that before he went astray. King Solomon.
I gotta read his books because I keep hearing about Solomon lately. I gotta read it. I haven't read any of his.
You've never read any of his books? Man, wow. Maybe that's something we need to do in this group is start reading Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Ecclesiasticus, which is also known as Sirach in the Apocrypha.
Look also in the Brit Hadashah in John chapter 9, verse 31.
Oh, yeah, that's, Yahusha actually is saying it too. Okay, so that's John 9, verse 31.
Mm-hmm.
Says, now we know that Yahuwah hears not the transgressors, but if any man be a worshiper of Yah and does his will, him he hears. Basically meaning that if he does his will by keeping his commandments, he will hear him.
So would that mean like Christians, will he hear the Christians?
Not if they're
not doing his commandments.
What if they're ignorant to it? What if they're ignorant to it and don't know better?
I think that's a different story, but if a Christian does, like if we apply what Proverbs 28:9 says, if you don't even want to hear the Torah, you don't want to hear someone telling you need to keep the law, then no, I don't think he's.
See, if you said to somebody and you start trying to teach them, and then I can understand. Then they're like, man, get out of here with that.
Like you know how the debates we've seen in priors past where Christians would like attack people trying to bring this truth to them. They would say, oh, I hate the law because it nailed Yahusha to the cross. That type of person?
Yeah.
No, I don't think he hears their prayers because you're actually hating the Torah. You're actually hating his commandments.
They harden their hearts.
You're in the flesh. I mean, Paul even says, he says the mind of the flesh is against the spirit because the spirit is to keep the law. The flesh, I think it says in Romans, the carnal man cannot keep the law of Yahuwah. It's impossible. The carnal mind is.
Yeah, no, they'll flip that.
Well, the carnal mind, meaning the carnal man, the carnal mind has enmity towards the law. So meaning that if you're a carnal person, you can't keep the law. That's meaning like you will be unable to keep the law because you won't want to keep it. You'll When you're walking in the flesh, you're not going to want to be in the spirit, and being in the spirit is keeping the law. See that the whole doctrine of being of the spirit is not keeping the law. That's a false doctrine of Christianity. They don't understand that when you're walking in the spirit, you're keeping the commandments because the spirit of Yahuwah is causing you to keep the law.
He's guiding you to.
That's what the new covenant was always about. Jeremiah 31:31, Ezekiel 36:26-27. I mean, the whole point of the new covenant was to put his law in our hearts. So it's actually in our hearts. That was what he found fault with them, was that the law was written down for them, but it wasn't in their hearts. It wasn't in their hearts to do them. They were like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
Like they had the same mentality. And the parts they wanted to do, they wanted to do the feast days and whatever, the fun parts. But as you can see in Jeremiah he's saying, you know, what's the point of you keeping the feast to me when, you know, you're not keeping the rest of my commandments? It's like they kept what they wanted to keep, you know.
Like you said, cursed is the man who does not obey the words.
And I think it's somewhere in the chapter we just read in chapter 11 where it talks about the feast and stuff like that, and people twist that to say that he doesn't like his feast. It's that he still wants us to keep his feast, but if we're going to be sinful,
those are pagan feasts.
Well, yeah, that's true.
I know what you're talking about. I actually went through that. I believe that those are the pagan feasts that they were adopting.
Well, also there is portions where they're keeping his feast days and his new moons, and he says in Amos, they're abomination to me because you're not taking care of the orphan, the widow. You're not doing this, you're not doing that, but you want to keep my feast. So it's kind of like I always say when a Christian says, "Oh, it's okay, I sinned all week. I'm going to go to church on Sunday."
Look at
It's like, oh, I can do whatever I want. I can commit adultery, whatever.
Once saved, always saved, right? Yeah.
And then,
hold on. Here's a question that I got.
Verses 4 and 5. Because verses 4 and 5 tell you, those who forsake the Torah praise the wicked. Those who guard the Torah strive with them. Evil men do not understand right ruling, but those who seek Yahuwah understand all.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bobby. You wanted to include.
My question is: say we guard his commands, but guarding his commands, we are unclean at times. That doesn't mean we're sinning; just means we're unclean. My question is: does he hear us in those unclean states?
Well, unclean is not exactly sin. When you're say a woman's unclean by the issue of blood, she's not sinning.
Yeah, that's a good. I didn't mean sin. I meant
I know what you're saying.
But there are times we're unclean. But that's a good point you bring up. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, I think what happens is we see verses like in Jeremiah where it says, you know, don't touch the unclean thing, and we kind of get an idea that unclean is always defining sin. There's parts in the Torah where unclean is separate from transgressing the law. That's completely separate. It's actually a different thing. A woman naturally becomes unclean. She can't help it if she's unclean from having a child, for having her period. How is she going to help that? It's not that she's sinning. There's even different offerings in the Levitical priesthood. There's sin offerings proposed to uncleanness and stuff like that. So it's not exactly the same thing. But you can be unclean when you sin. So it's not all uncleanness is referring to sin, but sometimes when someone's unclean, it's sinful.
You can be unclean due to a sin.
Let's use the example of being unclean, sinning by touching a pig. That's sin. But you're also unclean at the same time. But not always being unclean means that you've sinned. So that's the best way I could describe that. And my answer to Bobby's question is, I believe Yahuwah does hear us. Say a woman, you know, had an issue with blood and stuff like that, like a disease, like Yahusha healed. Yahuwah hears her prayers as long as she's being obedient. Now, if she's sinning and being unclean at the same time, now that's a different story. If she's willfully sinning on purpose and then she has a disease, like an issue with blood, that's a different story. But if she's actually being obedient to the Father and to Yahusha and she's walking in his ways, but yet she has something with, you know, either having a child, you can be unclean by being pregnant and having a child. You're unclean for 8 days, I think it is. So there's different ways you can be unclean and it's not a sin. So that's the best way I could describe it. So I would say Yahuwah still hears the prayers of people that are unclean by natural uncleanness, natural. You touch a dead body because you work at a morgue doesn't mean you sinned. You know, there's certain things that it's not universal uncleanness means sin. I guess that's my point I'm trying to bring out.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, so I think it's pretty much self-explanatory, this chapter. I mean, definitely it goes back to the Moloch Baal worship, passing your children to the fire, which Yahuwah said right out in Deuteronomy, right out in the beginning. Do not do it.
I just like how he says, obey my voice, and you shall do according to all that I command you. And you shall be my people, and I be your Elohim.
Yep.
Bottom line.
Bottom line.
It's amazing that he's still pleading with them when they're at this point. I mean, this chronologically is after the fact that they're rebelling and saying that, or maybe no, maybe I'm getting this wrong. Maybe this is before they reply back and say, we're going to still worship the Queen of Heaven. We're still going to pour out drink offerings to her. Because if this is after that fact, man, that's merciful. That's beyond mercy. Like, I wouldn't even be pleading with someone saying, I'm going to continue to worship the wife of Nimrod. I'm going to continue.
Showing his mercy, be still.
Yeah, like, that's beyond the point I could be merciful to. Like, if the order of these chapters is what I think it is, and I would have to look it up in Jeremiah where he talks about stop worshiping the Queen of Heaven, stop doing that stuff. Because if this is after that, that's beyond mercy. That's like, wow. They were doing some messed up stuff back then. They were, the main two idols they had was Baal and Ashtaroth. That's the main two idols they had. And I think that's why Yahuwah was so angry with them. Those were the.
They had many other ones too. As big as
yeah, many other ones. There was many other ones, but the two main ones that Yahuwah brings out, that speaks about, is really Nimrod and his wife. Like, you'll see it all over. You'll see Baal and Ashtaroth spoken about everywhere in the prophets. Like, that's the two main Yahuwah cannot stand, because they were real people. They were actual people. And Nimrod was technically by blood, he was an Israelite by blood. He was supposed to be one of Yahuwah's children. So Yahuwah looked at it as, this traitor. He was a son of Shem, Nimrod.
Totally like the evil one.
Yeah, and kindly, there's a connection, really, if you think about it. There's a connection between Nimrod and Judas. Judas is a betrayer. So is Nimrod. Nimrod, according to the book of Jasher, not everyone believes it's like authoritative, but the book of Jasher says that Nimrod walked in Yahuwah's ways in the beginning. He actually had the garments of Adam. And all of a sudden, he started creating this pagan religion. So there's a reason why Yahuwah hates him so much, according to the book of Jasher. There's an actual reason. Like, Yahuwah looked at it as, Nimrod was like a child of his, and then he goes on and betrays him.
You see how you'd say he was possessed by Hasatan.
Oh, I definitely think that. If you look at the Tower of Babel and what they were trying to do, according to Jasher, yeah, he was possessed by Satan. Because I really read Isaiah 14:12 now, and I get the lens of Jasher in there, and I start realizing what was going on with the Tower of Babel. Like, he was trying to ascend up to Yahuwah and defeat Yahuwah and
stairway to heaven.
And yes, stairway into heaven. Like it. So when I look at Isaiah 14:12, I don't think it's just talking about Halel. I think it's also talking about Nimrod in a way too, because Isaiah 14 is about the destruction of Babylon. Also talks about the king of Babylon being destroyed. So I think it's like a dual prophecy almost. It's talking about Satan, but also talking about the guy he's using to ascend up into heaven in a way. So it's I don't know. That's kind of what I think about when I think about what was the purpose of the Stargate of the Tower of Babel. What was the purpose of it? To get into Yahuwah's throne, to actually set up their own deities, because Nimrod was the person to actually promote the pagan religion. He created that type of religion with polytheism and all that after the flood, because before the flood that was taken away. The Watchers were done. That whole religion of paganism, Yahuwah got rid of that with the flood. And then you have Nimrod getting the religion of the Watchers back, and then getting people to worship the host of heaven and all that. So, I mean, there's many reasons why Yahuwah hates Baal and Ashtaroth. There's many reasons. But I know they worshipped other idols, but you'll see those are the main two idols within a lot of books, you'll see them stated a lot by Yahuwah. And Yahuwah's like, stop worshiping them. Those two main ones Yahuwah focuses on. He's telling them, stop worshiping them. Stop idolizing them. Like, stop, especially the Queen of Heaven. She's like mentioned like crazy. Like, I don't know what was the fascination about that. The whole hot cross buns in Christianity goes back to her.
What?
Yeah, hot cross buns.
What's that?
Oh, okay. So you got the buns in Christianity with the cross icing. They make a cross with the icing, and it has to do with Easter, another pagan holiday. And Easter's all about her. That was another name for her, for Semiramis. Ishtarte, Easter. So the whole Easter thing, we haven't even gotten to that point of the season yet, but we should definitely do a study about that. But, yeah, Easter's all about the worship of her, and Christmas is all about the worship of Nimrod. So the two main holidays that Christianity promotes the most is the two idols Yahuwah hates. He can't stand above every other idol because they're mentioned the most. And Moloch's another name for him, where you see in Acts chapter 7 where it says you took the tabernacle of the star of your god Molech, Remphan, that's Nimrod. So they're constantly, Yahuwah is using these names that go right back to that same guy, because even in the X-Men Apocalypse movie, which most people see Apocalypse as Nimrod, like most people that look at, the character of Apocalypse, he actually says in that movie, I've been known by many names through many lifetimes.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, it's almost like Nimrod was like channeled through that guy for that role, because he's literally acting like Nimrod. There was a lot of blasphemy in that movie, that the four horsemen the Bible got it from him. Very blasphemic. And so, I personally believe where you see a lot of these different names for different idols, it might not be different people. It might be the same person, actually. It's just different names in different cultures, because the Tower of Babel, you had like 70 different nations come from that event. And Nimrod united, that was the first one world religion. Everyone worshipped him at the Tower of Babel. You had barely anyone being obedient to Yahuwah other than Shem and Noah and Noah's family. Everyone after the flood went to worship Nimrod. So, he was like the first anti-Messiah. And, so that's, and I think that's why Yahuwah hates him so much, is this guy united almost the whole world in pagan worship. And so when his people are whoring, spiritual adultery, worshiping that guy and his wife, I mean, Yahuwah takes that personal. That's like, that's like you're betraying me. You're being a Judas. Like, I think that's why Yahuwah takes it personal. That's my own conspiracy theory. I think that's why you see Baal and Ishtarte or Ashtaroth everywhere in the Old Testament, because Yahuwah cannot stand that. And those are the main two that Yasharel focused on idolizing over. Those are the main two that they go after. So anyway, so I know I went on a rabbit trail, but I thought it was important to explain that to the viewers of who Baal actually is. And he's the guy that pretty much led the first one world government, one world religion, and where the elite are trying to take it back to. That's why they have a building in Europe that looks like the Tower of Babel. There's like a Capitol building that literally looks like it. So, these guys idolize him too. The elite idolize him. He's rumored to be the father of Freemasonry, supposedly. It's either him or Enoch, son of Cain. There's always one of they either believe it's him or the bad Enoch, son of Cain, that started Freemasonry. There's like different ideas of who actually started, but either way, that's who they practically idolize in that religion. And so
they're bringing him back for the end time anti-Messiah.
Yeah, I believe he's the anti-Messiah. I believe there's proof. Revelations 9:11, Apollyon. Apollo was known as the sun deity, so Apollo was another name for him. And in the Greek tongue, it says in the Greek tongue he was called Apollyon. In the Hebrew, Abaddon. Abaddon would have also been known as the destroyer. So, Abaddon means the destroyer in English. So, he's in the bottomless pit and he's going to be taken up. And it's rumored that he was killed by Shem, some believe. Some believe that Shem actually killed him. And then some believe that it was Esau. I mean, there's a lot of differences with the stories of how he was killed, but it's rumored that his left eye was taken. That's why we had that on the dollar bill. His left eye was cut off, and he had a head wound that caused him to die. So that technically partially fulfills prophecy, because he had a head wound that caused him to die. It says in Revelations he had a head wound that practically brought him to death, but then he was brought back to life. So many, even Christians, understand that whoever the anti-Messiah is, that he was wounded to death, a head wound, but that the false prophet, the second beast, will bring him back to life and somehow will get him to be resurrected. So I personally believe that Nimrod will be resurrected just because of the movies that are coming out. X-Men Apocalypse depicts his consciousness transferred to his dying body to a new body. So, I mean, however they do it, I believe that it's going to happen, and I believe there's more than enough evidence for that. I mean, that's a whole other topic. I believe there's more than enough evidence, especially Revelations 9:11. Whoever has not read that verse, please read that verse. That verse describes who the beast is that ascends out of the pit. Said,
And that is where he comes from. He doesn't come from Kenya or...
He doesn't come from the United Nations. He doesn't come from Britain. He's not going to be some world leader that is new, because it even says itself in Revelations. He is he who was but is not and is yet to ascend out of the bottomless pit. So meaning he's the what is the term called? Antithesis? Am I saying that correct? The antithesis of Yahusha?
Anti-Messiah or Nemesis.
Because physicist, there's a certain fancy word I heard Rob Skiba call, he's the antithesis, meaning that
antithesis.
Yeah, antithesis of Yahusha. He's like the total opposite. So he's the one that was the anti-Messiah, but is not the true Messiah, and he is yet to ascend out of the bottomless pit, and that's Revelation 17.
Mm-hmm. That's where he's coming from. So, don't be lied to.
So that's why I believe the anti-Messiah can't be someone new. It's impossible. It's not going to be a new person. It's going to be someone that was in the beginning. And just like Dero brought out.
God is the, where's the verse that says he ascends from out of the bottomless pit?
I know it's in Revelation 17.
If you show them where it is, then they can look at it for themselves. Don't believe us, just believe what the scripture says.
I'm trying to remember the wording. He was and is not, and yet will ascend out of the bottomless pit. So that's interesting too. He's a complete opposite of Yahusha, that he's going to.
The beast that you saw was and is not and is about to come up out of the pit of the deep and goes to destruction. That's in chapter 17, verse 8. And those dwelling on the earth whose names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world marvel when they see the beast that was and is not and yet is.
Yeah, so that's Revelation 17:8. And what's interesting, it says that he will ascend out of the bottomless pit. So he's like the complete opposite, because Yahusha ascends up. He ascends into heaven. The beast is ascending from below the earth onto the earth. So instead of ascending up to heaven, he's just ascending to the earth. So it's like almost a total opposite in that aspect too. So
And what CERN is all about, the Large Hadron Collider, that's why they built it, to bring Nimrod and others up out of the pit.
Yep. So we're about to get cut off. We're probably going to come back on unless we're ready to end the study, but I think we're going to come back on, everyone. So we only got a minute left, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.